leadership is hard. Titles change overnight, expectations pile up fast, and nobody hands you a survival map. That's why Leadership on the Rocks exists. Hi, I'm Bethany Reese, leadership coach, author, and speaker. And for 2 decades, I've been equipping leaders to navigate the wild, unpredictable terrain of leading people. Whether you're a new leader trying to find your footing or a seasoned leader trying to reclaim clarity, this podcast gives you the tools, truth, and encouragement you need to thrive in both your professional and personal lives. Each week, I sit down with leaders who have weathered storms, climbed mountains, and learned what it takes to lead without losing yourself in the process. If you're ready to build steady, grounded, life-giving leadership, this is your place. Let's climb together.
Owners bring their heart, head, and hands. So people who are owning it show up with passion, care, imagination, curiosity, creativity, and they have skills and ability. Renters bring their hands, right? They're like, you know what? It's not worth, I don't need to think about this. I clock in, do my job, I clock out. I do a good job when I'm there. I do what I'm asked to do. I do what my job is. And then when I leave, I don't think about it again. I don't spend any energies on it because it's just not worth it. There's no need to.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Greg Hawkes about building an ownership culture, why it's the competitive advantage organizations need, the 3 employee mindsets every leader must recognize, and why AI won't fix broken leadership if we don't upgrade our human operating systems first. Greg Hawkes is a keynote speaker, author, and corporate culture specialist who challenges leaders and teams to act like an owner. For more than 25 years, he has partnered with organizations across the country to reshape culture, deepen trust, and activate ownership mindsets. Earlier in his career, Greg spent a decade as executive director of a nonprofit, leading teams through complex challenges and building environments where people contributed at their best. That experience became the foundation for his work with companies of every size, from ESOPs and credit unions to Fortune 500 corporations and national associations. Now, in his book, Act Like an Owner, 5 Unlocks for Creating Culture People Love and Results Leaders Need, Greg introduces vivid metaphors and frameworks such as owners, renters, vandals, the 5 unlocks, and the 3D plan for designing culture intentionally. Known for his energetic presence, and y'all, I can't wait for you to meet him, but he also has distinctive language, practical strategies. Greg equips executives and employees alike to re-engage, increase accountability, and spark growth. Welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Greg. I'm so happy to have you.
Bethany, that is a lot. That is a lot.
Well,
Man,
they need to know just how awesome you are. I mean, from the second I met you, I'm like, this dude has energy. I cannot wait for this episode. You are wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And I love that introduction. I'm like, who wrote all of this? I'm always like, keep it brief when I'm speaking. Literally, I have like a live, I'm like, let's keep it brief. Here's Greg, basically. Let's get on with the show. So
it's such a delicate like line that you walk of, hey, this dude is actually credible. Like, let me tell you all his stuff, but also he's just awesome and he's going to keep it real because that's really what we want to lean into. But you know, as the podcast host, you got to steward that. And by the way, he's actually really professional and legit.
Yeah. It is an interesting dynamic because I as an audience member, I'm always like, I don't care what he's done. What have you got for me today? Like, let's see how this thing goes today. And so I'm usually like, yeah. He might have all these accolades, but what do we got today? So I'm like, when I speak, I'm like, who cares? Let's just deal with what we're going to deal with today and make that useful and helpful and relevant for people.
Well, thank you. And that was a perfect setup for what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about culture, right? Mm-hmm. And I first want us to define what culture is, because I think most leaders oh yeah, I know what it is. But being the educator, we always have to define what we're talking about so we're all on the same page, or as my husband would say, at least in the same book. So if we're going to talk about culture and making sure that we're building a great one, give us a definition of what culture is.
Bethany, it's so funny that we start with this because I've been in this space for quite some time, and you'll be shocked to hear there are a variety of definitions for what people think culture is. I am of the broadest perspective. It's just the environment that we have shaped for people to live and work in. So
Mm.
at its broadest, and I usually would do a corollary or a parallel with countries. If you go to France, they have a culture. It's based on food, language, architecture, art, government, system, process. If you go to Italy, not very different culture, but it is those same elements that create it. In a
Mhm.
workplace, I believe those same kind of things, the language we use, the way we present ourselves. People call it brand, but I like the artistry and artisticness and our visual representation of who we are, how we govern and how we decide what's important to us and what this place looks like. And so but other people also will just say culture is the way it feels around here. Culture is
Mm.
what we tolerate. What is it we tolerate? That's the culture we have. And so and when you work in different companies, whether it's manufacturing, technology, uh, you know, businesses that are mom and pop shops, they mostly aren't intentional about shaping it. It just kind of
Mhm.
evolves over time. And so that's why it's one of those conversations like, well, what is it? Well, most people aren't like starting out a business saying, here's the culture we're going to create, and then let's get the
Yeah.
people to fit and let's serve that. It's usually, here's the product or service we're going to do. Let's bring people together, help us, and it's an afterthought.
It's so true. Everybody, and I had to have to sit on this and I have to just chew on it over
Okay.
and over and over again. Every entity, whether it be an organization, a ball team, or your family, you have a culture. You may not
Hmm.
have intentionally shaped it. And like you said, most of us aren't intentional in that. It just happens, but you have a culture. And I
Hmm.
think if we took a hot second to just say, what kind of culture do I want? We want it to be positive. We want it to be full of accountability and in your words, like everybody has ownership in that.
Hmm.
But that may not be the truth of the matter because if you also think about it and I hope social media doesn't put these like darkened lenses on how we see things, but it feels like most cultures, whether it be organization at my work, at my home, or wherever, it tends to be negative. It tends to be like I got a lot of
Really?
burnout. And then
Okay.
also we have this whole like thing that's kind of been coming the last couple of years, quiet quitting. And
Hmm.
so we can say we want one thing, but we're experiencing something different. So what's going wrong with our work cultures here? Help us
Well,
out.
I think what leaders, because leaders have an extraordinary impact on what an organization, and you're doing this podcast to create healthy leaders, to help people grow into a level of leadership that has the best impact and the most benefit to the people that they're leading. And so I don't know if I'd say it's going wrong. It's usually a priority focus in so much that people
Mm,
are like they're trying to meet deadlines, hit financial goals, trying to manage people issues, and have all these other elements that really make business function is what keeps people
yeah.
employed and keeps customers happy and keeps the product lines moving. And so the that's why it's secondary because it doesn't on the surface feel like it has a financial benefit if you're just
Mhm.
looking at it from a productivity standpoint, even though like people in leadership know, if people trust each other, if people are having the candid conversations that are hard to have, if we create that environment where people are empowered and enabled to speak up, speak out, share their
Mhm.
experiences at any level of the organization, then it is a financial benefit. It does create an efficiency that has a bottom line impact. But most people don't. I wouldn't say most people. I would say the challenge that you referred to is the friction of we always have more to do than the people we have. There's always more to get done than the time allotted. There seems to be a stretching
Mhm.
of the dollar that just is difficult. And so it's like, so, and now you want me to talk about environments? Like, it's
Yeah.
like, what is this? And so attaching it to the productivity, the bottom line, how it keeps people connected, engaged,
Mhm.
because one of my philosophies is that, we have a limited resource of excellent manpower and the and oftentimes leaders are frustrated with their people and they have these fantasies of like there are better people out there. I need to get better people. And the
Grass is
reality is,
greener somewhere else
yeah,
with
I mean,
someone else.
leaders have that same
Yeah.
perspective, like in people. And I'm like, listen, get the best out of the people that you have. That's the
Mm.
challenge is you're not creating an environment that taps their best to bring it. And so that's what I'm a proponent of. And the philosophy that it really does impact the results across the board as far as employee retention, employee engagement, employee satisfaction, and customer satisfaction, and
Mhm.
efficiencies in productivity, and creating profitable margins, and so on and so forth.
That's so good. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just sitting here like, oh man, you have hit such a foundational truth that we have to sit in of saying, stop wishing that you would have hired somebody else or that your team was different and start leading the people that you do have. Like,
Yeah.
look at the reality of who you have and get the best from them. I think that mindset shift will change so many things about how we engage with the people in front of us. And
Well,
we do.
Bethany, I'm not. I don't want. I am interrupting you.
No,
The challenge is because, like, you know how it is when working with leaders, and you deal with everybody individually, and it's like everybody has gaps. Everybody has
mm,
not shortcomings, but they have deficiencies, right? So it's like
yeah.
the thing. Everybody's got that. That's why we've got a collective of people. And a leader, and most leaders are overwhelmed. Like it's just true. They're just living without much margin in their life and they're feeling the stress and pressure themselves. And so, I'm like, instead of it feeling like creating a culture, an ownership culture is an add-on, it is really the solution to say, if you'll focus a little bit on shaping this environment, then all these individuals, instead of you having a direct responsibility for every single one of them, you create this place, and then there's a collective, collaborative benefit that spirals people up. And because when people listen to podcasts, I'm sure you've had this experience with leaders, they're they're tapped also. Like they
Mhm.
are the pressures they are facing to just perform and get their teams to perform feels enormous. And so that idea of like, but so I'm like, this is the solution. It's almost a shortcut actually, and people are always looking for shortcuts. But the reality is, if you can focus a little bit on the environment, then all the people within it then can be a benefit to one another and not this one man-to-man coverage. It's a zone approach. You mentioned ball. I don't know what ball you were mentioning, if you're a
Any ball. I love
baseballer, a
all sports.
basketballer, or yeah. I don't know if your son was in sports and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
she immediately, so there must be some athletic reference that you got to be a part of, which is
Oh,
great for
yes.
leadership.
It so is, yes. And I love playing all sports. I'm not necessarily talented at all sports, but I do enjoy all of them.
Since when
Another
is
like
talented matter to play sports?
totally. But let me tell you another visual that I had in my head as you're talking about this of, and it's so true. You are so hitting the pain point that we all feel is that constraint of as the leader. I don't have I'm always fighting problems, conflicts, constraints, right? Constant things. I don't have what I need, or I don't feel like I have what I need to be successful and reach the goals that I want. And I'm constantly battling that. I'm battling it internally and externally. And then I was also thinking, you said it's really hard for us to take the time to talk about the environment when we're so concentrated on the tasks that are in my face with deadlines today, right? And the parallel that I had in my head is that not what we also fight in the family with like health of cooking fresh food because we
Mhm.
know it's going to be better. We know these things, but we have a knowing doing gap. I
Yeah.
know if I spend the money, which it's more expensive to eat healthy, to buy fresh food, cook for my family, they're going to be healthier. But let's look at work. I know that I need to focus on environment and organizational health, and yet I feel like I don't have the time, the financial, bandwidth, the margin, as you said, to do
Mhm.
all those things. And so I think the baseline battle that we're fighting with is we know it's important and yet we don't do it. So help
So,
us.
welcome to life, huh,
Yeah,
Bethany?
yeah, absolutely. It's the
That's
knowing
all
doing
of
gap.
life. The no
Help
do
us
gap. Dang it.
change that. So where do we
You,
even start with,
oh,
okay, most of us know it. How do we do it, Greg?
Bethany, we might
How?
have to have a two-part podcast here. This is so in one of the elements of my book, and I won't pitch book stuff, but the whole idea of accountability.
Mhm.
I'll talk a lot about people with accountability because the very thing you're talking about, I know there are things I should be doing or I could be doing or probably best if I did, and yet I already feel like I'm at full capacity. And so it's
Mhm.
easy for a person at any level of life to say, it's just not possible. And yet there are people who have the exact same amount of time, who have the exact same biological makeup, who are accomplishing significantly more than you and I are, and they're not saying, I just don't have the time to do it. And so
Mhm.
what accountability does, and people have a hard time with accountability in a professional setting because at its base, accountability says, I need help. There's an area in my, and listen, our egos, I don't care where you are in your leadership journey, nobody likes saying, hey, I'm supposed to be a professional, but you know what? I kind of suck in a few areas, and so I need somebody to help me. There is
Mhm.
nobody's ego that is out looking to expose themselves. And yet, what I have found, and I'm sure you have over your years of exposure to leaders and all that, without accountability, you and I can't sustain excellence. Period. End of story. Because just as you mentioned, our human nature has this tendency to just drift to mediocrity. We can't on our own sustain excellence. We can have an excellent one off, but in anything, in person, professionally. So if you were like, listen, I want to cook, I want to have two great meals a week that I'm cooking, and then we've got leftovers, and I'm doing that. I need to tell somebody else I have not succeeded in that. And that's what I aspire to be, that kind of person. What do I need
Mhm.
to do? I need to invite them in and say, listen, here's what I'm thinking. So they can say, well, what ingredients are you getting? What recipes? Let's start somewhere. Let's help you get some wins on the board so that you're not always feeling like the failure on Sunday when you're going shopping or whatever, you're meal planning for the week and you're like, I didn't do it. And so inviting someone in that can be a resource to you. They don't have to be an excellent chef themselves. They don't have to be doing exactly what you're doing, but you allowing yourself to be submitted to them in a way that says, I'm going to be vulnerable here. I'm going to open
Yeah.
myself up. I struggle with this. Can you help me? For me, in a professional setting, I call that the nudge. We're asking people to come into our life who will nudge us to remind us, oh, that's not the person I wanted to be. This is the person I wanted to be. And a
Mhm.
lot of times accountability feels like I just have to go tell somebody all the places I failed and I got to be accountable and these things. And I don't look at it that way at all. I look at it like accountability is a progress partner. Who am I inviting in my life that I want to make progress in that area? And I'm saying, haven't been able to do it on my own. I feel like it's a gap for me as a leader. I don't even know how I can do it because
Mhm.
I just on my own can't figure it out because I keep finding myself in this cycle that I keep coming back to. So maybe it's I'll give an example of like, hey, at the end of the day, sometimes I get short with my people. I'm tired, I'm frustrated. I find around maybe three after 3 o'clock, sometimes my communication with people that I'm leading
Mhm.
isn't actually kind of the standard that I want to set as a person, as a leader, and model for who I am. So I want to invite you in when you're in meetings with me and you catch me, or I can come to you and say, man, I snapped at one of my guys, in a meeting this week. I responded sarcastically. I said things that weren't helpful and useful, but they just came out of my tired place. I don't want to be that kind of leader. I don't want to be that kind of person. I want you to hold me to a standard that's better than that because I
Mhm.
just on my own I keep falling back into this pattern. And so breaking those patterns and inviting accountability, that really is because there is no more time. We don't magically get new skills we didn't have. We don't magically break habits that we've layered into our life for weeks, months, years, and decades. And
Mhm.
so it's inviting people in to say, I recognize this about myself and I want to be and do better.
Absolutely. All I can think of, we all wish for that, we hope for that, but wishing and hoping is not actually action.
Right.
It's all internal. And you are so spot on. The first domino that must fall is ego. You have to
Yeah.
be humility or humble to
Yeah.
say, I need someone to come. And I love your word nudge. That's such a good visual to say. They're not overbearing. They're not telling you what to do. It is your life. It is your leadership. It is your,
Mhm.
path to walk, but they do help nudge you along. Hey, think about this, think about this. And then you make the ultimate decision of action of which way you're going to go. And it's so important. So thank you for bringing that along of number one, guys, we got to, flick down the domino of ego, like get over yourselves. Number two, bring along someone with accountability that's going to help you have those conversations that you can be vulnerable with. It's so important. So I love, love, love the title of your book. I love the three mindsets. I cannot
Yeah.
wait to dive into these because I'm a
Oh.
visual thinker and I
Hmm.
love the parallels that you have. So you talk about three mindsets: owners, renters, and vandals. Oh my gosh, Tell us what they are, and I just can't wait to learn more about it.
It comes from you'd referenced it when I was executive director of the nonprofit, and then my in that setting, and I own investment properties. So for the last 25 years, I've been bought and sold single family properties, and so that's how that terminology leaked into my professional life, is because I had tenants who lived in my properties, and some of them honestly treated the house better than I treated it. They acted like they owned it. I have had two different tenants live in a house for 9+ years. They raised their families there, and it was their home, and they treated it that way. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm so glad I mean, that is the goal of any person who owns investment properties. And then I've had people who just rented, who were just there for the season of life that they needed. They came in, came out. They weren't destructive. They didn't make it better, didn't make it worse. They just lived there. They're just like, I'm transitioning in life, or I'm in college, or I've changed jobs, or I moved to the city, and I'm finding so like the renters. And that's why I like always like to clarify it in the book. It's really clear, and in my speaking, it's really clear. Rent folks who are renting aren't bad people at all. Like, they are good people statistically based on Gallup's. Because I parallel it with Gallup's engagement survey, which is the engaged, disengaged, actively disengaged. And so that's owners, renters, vandals. And so the renters, the disengaged, statistically, 25 years since Gallup's been doing it, never move more than 1 point in either direction each year consistently. And it's 50 to 52%. They're literally every other person in the workforce for the last 3 decades is what we've got. So that group is, so they are the economic engine of America. These folks that are, so I have a real compassion for them, because my philosophy is they showed up day one with an owner's mindset. They wanted to contribute. They wanted to make a difference. They wanted to bring their best. They wanted to show that it was a good idea to hire them. They've got lots of value to contribute. They want to be responsible. And over the course of the time in the organization, because their culture, the organization's culture, doesn't empower owners, they learned it's just not worth it to rent around here. It's just not. I mean, it's not worth it to buy in. It's just not worth it to give my extra. It's just not worth me going all in. And so my shorthand for them, Bethany, is owners bring their heart, head, and hands. So people who are owning it show up with passion, care, imagination, curiosity, creativity, and they have skills and ability. Renters bring their hands, right? They're like, you know what? It's not worth. I don't need to think about this. I clock in, do my job, I clock out. I do a good job when I'm there. I do what I'm asked to do. I do what my job is. And then when I leave, I don't think about it again. I don't spend any energies on it, because it's just not worth it. There's no need to. And then vandals, they're the ones that are the actively disengaged in Gallup's language. And for me, they're the silent saboteurs, or sometimes loud saboteurs. They're the ones who they're not just the quiet quitting, they're active resistors who create division, who when a leader will say, hey, here's where we're going, here's what we're doing, here's the vision, and they're reaching for something, they're the kind of people who are like, that's not ever going to happen. I've been here, seen that, done that. So they just kind of sit back, and they're the same kind of people who say, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Like when something doesn't turn out, because vision has risk, and when we're reaching for something, sometimes it doesn't. But the people who say, I knew that wasn't going to work, that means all this time that everyone else has been working for it, they've been like, not giving themselves to it, and probably sowing a little discord, as it were, amongst their team and towards leadership or even their colleagues. Gossip is just one of their primary tools, because it's so destructive in what it does on a team, in creating division and a lack of unified effort towards the goal. And so those are my shorthands. Owners bring their heart, head, and hands. Renters bring their hands, and vandals bring division.
If you're enjoying the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode. And also, please rate the show. We hope to earn 5 stars in serving you in leadership. And through your ratings, it'll help us get the word out about what we do here at Leadership on the Rocks. Now, back to the show. Yeah, division and spray paint.
Yeah.
Just joking.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so good. So, if all of these identities exist, all of these types, and I can even say it, depending on the job that I've had, I've probably drifted in and out, because you're so right. The
Totally.
culture will help me determine that. Hopefully, I've never been a true vandal.
And even seasons of life, Bethany. Like sometimes you're like, listen, I want to buy in. I've got a parent who's going into some of the extra care. So you know what? I just don't honestly have the mental capacity right now, or I've got a kid who's going through something. It's really challenging. And so you're talking about blending, and that's why you want to have an ownership culture, because then you can have these very open conversations and say, look, I can't be all in this season or this month or this thing, because I've got these other things. And there's a
Yeah.
give and take. So it's not an either or. You're not an owner or a renter or a vandal. You fluctuate on your own seasons of life, and even sometimes just what's happening with you. You're like, listen, I'm
Hmm.
having some health issues. I'm having
Yeah.
some challenges, and it's really taken a toll on my emotional bandwidth and my capacity to engage in the way that I want to. And so there's, grace is built into that in an organization that has that, and an understanding. At least it gives space for the dialogue to say, listen, I'm all in heart, but you know what? In mind, I'm having some real difficulty right now. And so, well, and always when I share and talk, it's like it's not you're this and that's it. It's boy, it fluctuates. And even I have these 5 unlocks. I'm like, in one of them, you might be like, I'm full on owning that, and another one, you're like, I don't know about if I'm full in on that one. So and that's just the and that's why I love your podcast, folks on leaders, because it's the leader's responsibility to manage that kind of energy and availability
Hmm.
of the physical, emotional, mental, relational of the people. And so the more equity they've built up, because again, using housing terms, the more relational equity a leader has built up with of their people, the capacity to have those kind of conversations honestly is really most effective.
Man, I cannot thank you enough for bringing grace to the table and the awareness of there is no shame in how you fluctuate between those. And
Mhm.
I want to remind something that you said. You said the majority of our economic workforce are renters. They come
Absolutely.
in and they do their job and then they leave. Their job is not their life, and it doesn't mean the ownership their job is their life either.
Mm-mm.
But it's they're bringing all of themselves with the talent, the passion that, like you said, the heart, hands, and the brains, the
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
And it's such a good way to start this conversation to like as a foundation of, okay, we are aware that there are three different mindsets that people can have when it comes to showing up and being a professional in the organization in which I lead, right? We're coming from the leader perspective. And I
Hmm.
think number one is the awareness that there are different types. And then you're building this awareness not only within yourself of, hey, Susie over there, she's always been a go getter, but she is having some health struggles or home struggles or whatever. And I even sometimes as a leader need to go in and help her recognize, hey, I know you've gone all in, but you have a lot going on and it's okay
Hmm.
to adjust, right? And I
Yeah.
just think if I ever worked for a leader that made it safe to have that conversation and where there wasn't guilt attached to it of, hey, step it back up to where you've always been. I
Yeah.
just think that I'm going to be so loyal and work for you till the day I die,
Yeah.
or the day I
Well,
retire.
it's so true because the ownership culture, that's what my position in life is everybody wants to live that way. People
Hmm.
want to live fulfilled. And when I have to turn off parts of myself when I engage at work, that's not that satisfying. Like, but
Yeah.
some leaders have a really misguided perception that people don't want to work hard. People love to work hard on things that really light their fire, on
Yeah.
things that really ignite and connect with their passion. And so, one of the leaders' greatest opportunities and challenges is how do I know my people well enough and know what is their motivator, know what inspires them, know where they have their own inclination to lean in, and how do I line that with what we're doing? We have to get a job done. We have to get work done. There are timelines, deadlines, but how do I as a leader find that in them and attach it to what we're accomplishing and do that? Sometimes, in a lot of the creative companies in days gone by, they always had like these 3M, for example. I mean, in Minneapolis these days, they'd say, 20% of your time, you just work on something you love. And so maybe 80% of the time you got this task, this responsibility, but we're going to carve out a little bit of space and you just dabble and put your energies in this. And it met that need for a person to say, I love going to work, even if every day, because I know I've got this space. And if a
Mhm.
leader can attach what they are passionate about to what they're doing, it doesn't have to be completely.
Yeah.
And so that is what leadership does. And so when anytime a leader blames a person that they're leading for something, it's a reflection of their leadership. It's not a reflection of that person. And that's a
Yeah.
really hard pill for leaders to swallow. But that's the opportunity we have as people who are outside working with leaders is saying, when you have these thoughts about your people, first is, have you created approachability? Have you built thick trust with them where they can share things with you? Have you spent the time getting to know them a little bit on what their return on their investment that they're really motivated by? And then are you taking that and aligning it with the work that needs to be done?
Man, you've taken us around the corner of now we're talking actual application, and it's so
Yeah.
true. Like it starts with you. Number one, you got to recognize all of these things, understand that they exist, but then immediately start talking about are you approachable? Like let's start with that reflective question, and are you building this space? So let's talk about application now that you've kind of made that corner turn.
Did I
Of
do that? I didn't know I did that, Bethany.
It was perfect. I mean, it's the natural next step of,
Yeah.
okay, if I have really not been doing a great job of concentrating intentionally on building the culture that I know I want, I say I want, right? I know I
Mhm.
want a positive culture of engagement and ownership and things like that, accountability, but I've not been intentional with it. So we talked about the first thing that's got to follow is the ego. We talked about
Mhm.
getting accountability. We talked about recognizing the different ways that people come into work, whether an owner, a renter, or a vandal. And so now I have all of this knowledge. Let's turn it into insight of wisdom of, okay, now what's actually my next step of what do I do to build this environment that takes me on the trajectory of a better path with culture? What do leaders really need to apply to do this?
Are you, so let me clarify your question so I can
Mhm.
answer it as best possible. Are you thinking like a leader on a team or like an executive leader, like organizationally? Because sometimes you
Thank you for
understand.
asking
Yeah.
that. And here's my approach to that is really we do need both, but we don't have time. Like you said, we need a part one and part two of this because your stuff is so good. But
Thank you.
ultimately, I think all that I can truly control is what's in front of me now. So let's go with the
Hmm.
team-based
Let's go with my
approach
team.
because if the executive team actually acts and functions as a high functioning team, it's all going to trickle down through the entire organization.
Right, right,
So
right.
let's take the I'm leading a team approach.
Well, the first thing is then transparency. Uh, trust is critical for all of this. You reference all those others. I
Mhm.
love how fast your brain synthesizes all of our conversation and then articulates it. I'm like, dang, that's really good. I really
That's the
appreciate how
teacher
you've done
side
that.
of
I
me.
was
I
gonna
don't
say, yeah,
know.
you did that really. I'm like, I'm paying attention. Like, I guess these are our takeaways. Um, but the idea of having thick enough trust to have a conversation with the team I'm leading. So let's say I have a team of 12 that I bear the responsibility for, and we do weekly meetings. The first thing is to say, ladies and gentlemen, I've been listening to Bethany, and I've been inspired.
Greg,
And I listen to Bethany and Greg.
there you go.
And first of all, listen to their podcast. Sign up for our podcast. Make sure you're listening to it every time. And then what I want to do though is facilitate a conversation about us, we can't, just like you said, we can't change the whole, but we can be really mindful and responsible for us here. So let me just say this as a leader. First, I want to thicken up trust. I want to make sure we are growing trust to a place that we can have candid conversations. Second, here are the values that our organization hold dear. And here in in my language, it's called in our room. In our room, if these are our five values, these two, here's how I interpret those. And these are really important for us to succeed. So I want us to be really conscious about how we're living these two out. Three, I'm going to, for the next 5, 6 weeks of meetings, start out talking about those values and talking about a struggle I have as a leader to live those things out. Because what you'll find, Bethany, the key to a little bit of transformation is the leader always modeling, you referenced it, humility, but this idea of like, I'm going to set the stage to talk about struggle, challenge, difficult. I'm
Mhm.
personally having, like we say, people are a priority. That's one of our core values. Here's the deal I struggle with. Honestly, we have to get stuff done, and we're behind, and we're missing
Mhm.
deadlines. And you guys think I don't have people as priority because I don't. I have our goals and our objectives because I got people breathing down my neck on what we're producing and where we're at. And so I'm struggling with saying we really value our people when there's this pressure to produce, produce, produce. And so that's just what I'm dealing with as a leader. I want you to know that because I do value you. I do appreciate you. I do hold the work you do as critical for what we're trying to achieve. And if I'm, and I, sometimes I have a hard time living that value out because of it.
Mhm.
So I've set the stage for we're going to have these kind of conversations for the next 4 to 6 weeks where I'm going to every single week spotlight the value that's important to us. Because here's the deal: we're trying to creating a culture that has a little bit of transparency, a little bit of recognition of what is really important and where we're coming up short in that or having struggled with that, we talk about that collectively. Then what happens is I, as a leader, transfer the responsibility to everyone on my team to be aware of how everyone else on the team is doing. And that's the magic of culture. It's the transference of collective responsibility for the well-being of those of us on the team. And when you
Mm-hmm.
can achieve that, then all of a sudden this thing of, oh, I've got this weight of leadership. Leadership is so hard because I've got all these people and they all got dramas and they all got personalities and they all got issues. It's a distributed weight that then is not a burden, but the opportunity for us to grow together.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's so good. Just sitting there and saying, I've got to go first. And
Always, Bethany,
yes,
always.
modeling it, but also as you were explaining that, it's like I also don't have to be perfect in that process. The whole point is to be not perfect, to show the vulnerability side of saying, "Hey, we have this goal, this, people are a priority, whatever that is." It's like you're
Mhm.
creating this third party visual statement that already exists.
Right.
And, all organizations have this and you're like, "This is where we wanted to head. I'm falling short."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
this is how. And I want all of us to work towards this together. So let's start having these conversations. Like it was just such a good entry point into establishing that trust that's going to change the entire environment and culture. So you mentioned the five unlocks. Is this something where we dive into that now? Because I mean, I'm intrigued. Whenever you give me a number, I am a list maker. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to take notes. What are the five?
Well,
Give me.
I don't know, Bethany, because I think we on our time frame on this. I referenced one of them, but they are for me, and I really appreciate your philosophy of the whole of a person, that the things that are happening in business are happening in their home or maybe happening in their spirit. That there's this idea of we can't really compartmentalize. I mean, people show up that way. And so what I really do appreciate about these five unlocks, 'cause I feel like a steward of this message, that it really is corporately, like if you'll be really mindful about these five unlocks that establish people enabled to bring an ownership mindset, an owner's mindset. It creates this
Mhm.
environment when you have these. But then also for an individual, if you will embrace these and really live these five unlocks, it gives you an autonomy and an agency and a sense of responsibility. There are just too many people in life, Bethany, who live not necessarily as victims, but just making like legitimate excuses, if there were such a thing, on why their life isn't what they wished
Hmm.
it
They're,
were.
they're living as victims instead of living as victors in their own life. Like you can choose
Yeah.
what
Well,
to do.
so in my language, people are renting their own life.
Yeah, there you go. The
They're
renting.
not
Yeah, that.
really owning it because they don't
Hmm.
have control. And some
Yeah.
people think ownership is control, and it's not, because even in an organization, I'm like, you could be brand new on the job, you could be there 6 months, you have no leadership role, but you can certainly bring an owner's mindset, and you can
Hmm.
certainly create a lot of value. Unlock number two is activate lasting value. So there's a whole way
There
to
you go.
do that, that you can dive into, that has nothing to do with time invested in the company. It's you as a person, how you show up every day, whether it is
Mhm.
work, whether it is your home, whether it is your relationships in your community, whether it is how you're interacting with your children. There's all of that. And so I want to be mindful of your time.
Yes, sir. And and
I-
here's the thing is if you can give us the list, the five unlocks, and here's the thing that I mean, you're going to tell us anyway where to go get the book because this is such an intriguing thing that's so important and it will eat your leadership, right? Culture
yeah,
eats,
yeah,
everything, all of your
yeah,
strategies for breakfast, lunch,
yeah,
and dinner, right?
yeah.
And so give us the five unlocks just in list
Okay,
and
so you just want the
then
list of it. Look
I
at you,
just want the
teacher. You're like,
list.
just write them on the board.
I because it's going to kick my brain off in a thousand different
Okay,
areas, and then I need to go finish reading your book to get all of the good stuff. And so I know
okay,
everybody listening who has that brain that like mine of wait, what was the list? Like whenever you're
yeah,
sitting in, whether it be a presentation or even in
yeah,
church. And
yeah.
then as soon as they say I've got three things, well, what are they? What one,
All
two,
right,
three? So what
yeah.
are the five things? And then we'll move on.
So I said the five, and that really, your brain is just like, all right,
It's
I gotta know
locked.
these five. Okay. So the first one is risk bold commitments. It's the cornerstone of everything ownership. Weirdly, everybody wants people to be committed, but they have not effectively communicated what commitment looks like. outside of time, and time is a really poor metric for measuring commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, activate lasting value. In that, the idea is encouragement and investment. And I talk a lot about the power of free words and how you can use words to cause you to be more valuable and the people that you're engaging with to be more valuable. Number three is reach for responsibility. Most people think of this one as ownership, particularly because they're like, I have to go above and beyond. But there is an element to understanding why and the idea of that people are investing their lives. And really, some people show up every day, Bethany, and spend their life at work. And owners
Mm.
show up and invest their life at work. And they're
Oh,
expecting something from their investment. All of us are expecting something from it. Then it comes in many different ways. So that's number three.
mhm.
Number four is widen the circle. So this is the idea of us and them and silos and why that exists and how to mind those gaps. So you talked about the no do gap. There's a lot of gaps in organizations, and in those gaps is where there's lots of opportunities for people to grow. And then the last one is think whole house. So I use the terminology of rooms in the house. Everybody works and lives in their room, and they have a tendency to think their room's the most important room in the house. And so I tell stories, and in all of the book, I tell stories about all of my tenants. But what happens is you think your room is just a little bit more important than everybody else's. And when things
Mhm.
happen in another room, you're more perturbed and annoyed than think, man, how can I contribute to its success if it's failing? And so, my line on that is, as an owner of a home, do you know which room I like the best? I don't buy rooms, I buy houses. A room has no value outside of the house. And yet people live inside rooms all the time talking like, they just don't know what we do around here.
Mhm.
This whole place would just fall apart if it wasn't for us. It's not true.
Yeah.
It's the house that has value, that gives value to the room that you're serving in. And so
Mhm.
those are the five unlocks.
That's amazing. Thank you. And you have completed the loop in my brain that was so desperately like, what are the five unlocks? I need to unlock a bunch of stuff and I don't know what it is.
Now
So,
you know.
yeah, before we get to the close with our key takeaways, I do have one more question. And I think
Okay.
it's so important. I know we can't go deep in this, but and I'm gonna have you back on just to talk about this one. Is there is such major growth in AI. And I know that people are using AI for so many things. And yes, it's a
Hmm.
tool, but Chat GPT won't fix your culture. So you can go
No.
in and type all day long, hey, give me an activity for team building. But you say that, hey, AI won't fix broken leadership. You actually have to upgrade, your human operating system first. So can you give us just high level umbrella? What do you mean? Can you expand on that? What do you mean by
Well,
upgrade your human operating systems first?
just just the idea that the humans are the critical component to all of work. What I love about AI and ChatGPT particularly that I use, it's a very verbal interaction. There's some visual things that it creates, and of course, how it's going to transform the workplace is the automation that it brings in. But a couple of things that I've been dwelling on and talking with leaders about also is first that AI literally does not have a soul. There is no heart. It can conjure, it can pull everything, and it can mimic, but it has no soul, which is a really interesting dynamic because we are becoming reliant on it. And I'm fascinated because I think trust is the foundation for every
Mhm.
relationship, for any success in any relationship. And what we talk a lot about is, can we trust the AI? Can we trust all these things? And it's all very one-sided. What I find really fascinating is that the AI has no intention or care about building trust with us. And so when you have a relationship that's trust on one side and the other side, Chat never says, Greg, can I trust you with this information? Can I trust your response and what you're going to do with, like, it's not part of its system. And so because it has no soul, because it doesn't have we don't have a mutual trust relationship, it will always at the end of the day offer a misguided perspective that serves our ego, the very thing you started out. Let's close that loop. The artificial intelligence in its interaction is always in service to our ego, and that's why it has the potential to always lead us in ways that aren't serving humans best. And it's not malicious. There's not a ill motive from it at the moment, but so that the human operating system says, listen, it is a tool, and if we will just keep it in, just like our computer, it's not just like it's transformative. Like, it's very amazing in the potential that it has to offer us. but in how we're servicing people and in the products that we're trying to offer and
Hmm.
the solutions we're trying to solve for humanity, there will always be the artificial intelligence will always have a sheen to it because it lacks the depth of human soul.
Oh,
And so being mindful of that as a leader, it helps you go, let's build this environment, let's incorporate it, let's
yeah,
utilize it and incorporate it, but let's not build from it for it. And so, and that's just a mindset that we get to bring, and it's
hmm,
really a philosophy that helps us still keep the right
yeah.
values in place.
Let's close the loop on your analogies of the house. As you were talking about it is a tool and things like that, I was thinking, okay, it can help you design the blueprints and it can help you be, the nail gun to go faster to automate processes and things like that. But it's not going to make the house a home. It's the
No,
people.
it can literally build the house and provide the
Yeah.
materials, but and
Yeah.
it can create the art.
Yeah.
It can create the feel, but it's synthetic. Like
Hmm.
there's no doubt about that. Even when you and I input this, it's a synthetic version of what a human has to offer. Excellent one. And oftentimes we're like, that's good enough. Like I like
Yeah.
that. That's better than I could do probably. And yet it misses the element of what imperfection
Hmm.
and what the human touch creates for us as people that our
Yeah.
souls resonate with, that it will never, ever, ever, ever be able to provide. And so use it as the tool that it is, maximize it and benefit from it, but keep the humans first.
Oh, so good. Thank you for that. Thank you for just satisfying my ultimate question about AI because it's growing. All right.
Yeah.
So now we got to wrap up. And
Come on,
I could
Bethany.
talk to you for forever, but in thinking of all the things we've talked about with culture and
Phew.
environment and the house and the visuals, what are some key takeaways that our listeners need to apply to grow in their leadership? So just quick summary, what are some key
Key
takeaways?
takeaways. First, it always begins and ends with the leader taking ownership. They own every relationship, they own every outcome, they own every choice of the people that they're leading. And it feels like, oh my God, that's such a burden. How can I do that? But it's the mindset that you bring to it. Because when you think that way, it causes you to act in a way that then creates collaborators instead of this hierarchical kind of approach to every human you interact with. Like, I'm the boss. And so, how do I shift it? So, that's it. So I'll stop. You because I could go on as well, Bethany.
Well, you know what? We got
Um,
to start with the foundation. That was a perfect key takeaway of it. It begins and ends with me and how I'm
mhm.
thinking about things and how I'm showing up and engaging with others. That's
Yeah.
it.
Okay. So do you want any more takeaways, or that's
Oh,
it?
no, no, no. Don't keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. I think the second you referenced it, that idea of grace, we've referenced grace, humility, recognizing seasons of life in leadership because there's always a sense of pressure for achievement, achievement, achievement. The absorption. So I talk about trust in thick and thin terms, and thick trust has an absorptive nature to it. When there's a lot of give that it happens when people have a thick trust with one another, and so I think as a leader, that's why trust is foundational, and that's why I leaned into it with AI and I lean into every conversation with leaders. If you're not consciously thickening that trust up, then you lose the absorptive quality and the thin trust, and everything is brittle, everything is breakable, everything is difficult. And when thin trust exists, you're not going to solve the right problems because you're not going to have the right conversations. And so innate creating a thick trust environment that enables grace, compassion, an awareness of humanity in people's lives, and doesn't let go of we've got results we have to produce, we've got timelines that we're working on, we have budgets that we're living in, and you've got to
Mhm.
find that combination of how those two play together. But that's the task of leadership.
Yeah. That's what you get paid the
So
big bucks for.
that's a second takeaway.
Those are
Third, and you'll love this, Bethany, because you're an educator. Language matters. How you
hmm.
speak and the words you use. So I like my owners, renters, vandals. It becomes a shorthand. People take it and run with it. I was talking to a leader who I've worked with before in the past. She was talking about homeowner associations and how they're built. It's a metaphor that people can expand upon. So as a leader, giving people visual language, verbal visuals, I call them. The
Mhm.
idea that using language that sticks with people, you
Yeah.
can be intentional about that. And honestly, ChatGPT can help you with that. That's a great bantering partner, but you formulating and using language that aligns with the mission of an organization or with the community and the team that you serve. I think that's really important as an educator. I think you know that like but people gravitate and hold on, and certain things remain, and it's typically because of the language used to articulate it.
Oh, so good. Greg, you have just been so wonderful. And, you've given us so much to think about. You're going to have to listen to this episode a couple of times, but now I'm going to ask you the opposite.
Oh
So,
no.
yeah, and it's a play on words because I love jokes, right? Leadership on the rocks. We're pouring a drink, but what's one
Yeah,
poor decision, like POUR? No,
gotcha.
what's one poor decision you would warn our leaders to avoid? Like, come on, leaders, don't do this one thing. You're better than that.
Thinking that their model of leadership is one of perfection and without flaws and faults. And we reference that, and a lot of leaders fall into it. It's like, I'm trying to set the example. And so in that example, I don't want to show deficiency. I don't want to show weakness. I don't want to show areas of struggle. And a lot of people pour that drink, and it creates a disconnect between their teams instead of like an admirable, oh, I aspire to be, because it's egocentric. And we've said this numerous times. So let me just say this one thing about confidence. The difference between confidence and arrogance is humility. And confident leaders, when people are around them, it builds the confidence inside of them. And an arrogant leader, when you're around an arrogant leader, it nestles up your own insecurities. You feel less. And so that's what I always tell people, because sometimes like arrogance and confidence looks similar. The key difference is humility, and the effect it has on you as someone who's being led by them.
Yeah.
When you're around the person with confidence, it causes you to have a greater confidence. When you're led by somebody who's arrogant, it causes you to feel less secure, and your insecurities fester.
Mm.
So as a
Oh,
leader, being able to talk about challenges, struggles, difficulties, not being ego led as a leader, but being humility led, really is the best act of confidence that lets others bring confidence to the table.
so good. Man, it's so good. All right, Greg, where can our listeners get to learn more about you, your work? Where can they get a copy of your book, Act Like an Owner?
Listen, it's out there. It's everywhere these days. So greghawks.com is the
Mhm.
website. So that's the easiest place to connect with me. I love LinkedIn also. So I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. And then the book is Amazon. There's an Audible, there's a hardback, there's a Kindle version. Barnes and Noble have it. I was just in a local Barnes and Noble last night. I was like, "Hey, how do I get my book in here? It's on your website. How do I get it in the store?" And so they're not physically sitting in Barnes and Noble just yet,
Mhm.
but they're on the Barnes and Noble website. I just have to go to each one personally around the nation and ask them to put it in there.
There you go. That
So,
road trip.
so
And
yeah.
I'm interested in getting the Audible because you're so
Oh, I
energetic. Like I
read it.
really want you to just read it to me.
I do. And listen, I found a third voice, Bethany. I'm sure did you teach in education?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I assume, so like when I speak, my wife will say, you go into your like speaker voice. And so I like move into this thing. She's like, don't bring that here. And then I'm at home and I'm just talking, I'm just normal. But when I read, I've never like, I mean, I read to my
Mhm.
kids all the time and I loved it when they were young. But in this, I got this voice and I started reading. And the engineer I did in the studio, he's like, you read and it just it makes me lean in to know what you're going to say next. I was like, I had no idea what show up, but now I have a narrator's voice that I'm like,
That's
ooh, I
awesome.
want to use this more.
Yeah, I have an administrator voice, and likewise, my husband said, we don't bring that voice home. I am not your student." Yes, sir. Sorry about that. Oh man. Well, Greg, thank you so much for being here. It has been an
My
absolute
pleasure.
pleasure and joy learning from you, and I'm so excited, I'm gonna listen to the book because I do want you to read it to
Okay.
me. I'm ready to
Yeah.
lean into it, even though I've already kind of perused through it. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time and your talent and your wisdom.
Thank you. My pleasure. Appreciate you.
Guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord, not for men.